Dawah is an important work that explored the significant principle and ideological basis and ideals of Dawah. He outlined a significant and inclusive manhaj that embraces the values of maqasid and moderate and justly uh, balanced thought and standpoint, and he outlines the clear foundation in missionary works with wide-ranging discussion of the idealism of movement and the principle of struggle. The ultimate objective of the law and the subject matter of Sharia. Fuqaha Dawa gives a deep insight into the fiqh of Islamic preaching, its philosophy and arguments, which is reinforced by the modern and classical ideas and tradition on the issues of Dawa. This significant work, and which also recollect Nasir instrumental in invaluable experience in the Dawa struggle in Indonesia, has placed Nasir as the ideal Dawa figure of the 20th century, who has outlined the essence of Dawa, significance, and idealism as described by the Dr. Tawhid Luth, and the central idea encompassed in his Daqwa. Quote, in the view of the Muhammad Natsir, Islamic propagation is an invitation that comprises Amr bin Maruf Nahi al Munkar, unquote. Next, his work, Kafiyat Dawa. This work proposes substantive Dawa theory that refers directly to the strategic struggle of and Daqwa endured by the barriers of Risala. The message of Dawa conveyed the focus on the three basic discussions. First, relation with Allah, interaction with the Creator. Second, relation with people, creation interaction with the creation. Third, establishing balance between the two. Muhammad Nasir says, quote, the trust of the Risala is the mandate of the Dawah that is bestowed on the best human all times, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in order to giving life and realizing the perfecting human beings and reality, conscience and life, unquote. The next is work, Capital Lecture, with a work that contains Muhammad Nasir important articles writing on issue concerning the politics, history, faith, kalam, tasawwuf, philosophy, sharia, comparative religion and literature. It exhibits his widespread readings and unprecedented majority of the Western and European literature as his excerpt from the work of the Middle Ages scholar. Muhammad Nasir cites and discards important works, the philosophy of major Muslim thinkers such as Al-Farabi, Ibn Sina, Al-Ghazali, etc. He analyzed the philosophical thought and expounded and the contradiction and conflict of ideas in the history and tradition of the medieval thought. Next, his work, the Agma Dan Neghara, means religion and the state. Nasir discussed the relationship between the religion and the state, the efforts of Muslims to fight for Islamic values in the life of the country. Nasir formulates the profound views of the political policy that preserve the principle of freedom and democracy, in which the question of the statehood is essentially a part of the government by Islam. Muhammad Nasir also discussed Islam different from the other religion, contains rules or state regulation, including the civil and criminal law. In order to carry out these law, it is necessary that an institution with its power can undertake the enforcement of those laws. Therefore, the existence of the ruler or government is an imperative. Muhammad Nasir prefers an inclusive and democratic the idea of freedom and democracy, as he asserted, quote, for me, Islam values are inspirational. I will strive for those values in democratic way, unquote. Now, Muhammad Nasir thoroughly advocate the Mazumi political ideal to making Islam and underlying the foundation of the country in pursuit of the Islamic ideals. Nasir expressed his commitment to maintain the democratic aspirations, the formation of the civil state. So now I conclude my paper, the collection of the Muhammad Nasir writing as an important and useful for our youths of the new generation, even more for the new generation of the Muslim youth. His writings spark a fire of the struggle and the new spirit and confidence with the sound of Trump calling for the true Islam and remedic and vibrant. Assalamu alaikum.
Sumaya, I appreciate your adherence to the theme and then keeping to time. Now we have with us Miss Sana Naz. She is a research scholar, Department of Islamic Studies, Aligarh Muslim University, Aligarh. The topic is Dr. Mohammad Natsir, Islamic Fikr Talim, Islami Fikr Talim or Marbut Nizam Talim. Islamic Fikr Talim or Marbut Nizam Talim. Over to you, Sana Naz. Please make your presentation. Are you there? Is Sana Naz present? Okay, Sana, please. Video उनका बंद है.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम सर.
वालेकुम अस्सलाम.
आप वीडियो अपना ऑन कर लीजिए.
हाँ, अपना वीडियो ऑन कर लीजिए.
हेलो.
अपना वीडियो आप ऑन कर दीजिए. आप.
यस सर.
Welcome. Okay, you can make your presentation now. आप अपना presentation दे दीजिए.
Good afternoon to one and all present over here. I am Sana Naz, Department of Sunni Theology, Aligarh Muslim University, Aligarh. I am going to present my paper and the topic is Dr. Mohammad Natsir, Integrated Education, a Study on the Islamic Educational Thought. This study discusses Mohammad Natsir's concept of integrated education from the Quranic perspective. Natsir was concerned with the need to develop the Muslim Ummah in Indonesia. Through educational approaches, he disagreed the system of Islamic education as presented with the Islamic boarding school, known as presented, arguing the graduates from such institutions were not occupied with worldly knowledge to maintain their survival and contribute to the development of the Ummah. In the real world, he equally criticized graduates of Western education for being highly motivated by material interests. The purpose of education, according to Natsir, cannot be separate from the mission of life in the world. That is to promote justice and to eradicate evil practice in the community. Natsir disagreed with the division of knowledge into Eastern and the Western, asserting that both realms of knowledge belong to God. The study attempts to discuss the relevance of these educational thoughts today as a contribute to the concept of Islamic knowledge. Natsir's view on concerned Western knowledge. Discussing the view of Natsir on Western education cannot be done with looking into this statement on the educational system during the Dutch colonial period in Indonesia. Natsir was mainly dissatisfied with the Western education system. Dutch education, which only offered secular subjects. Despite that, Natsir encouraged the prevention of secular subjects available in the Dutch educational institutions, such as psychology, sociology, and even Western philosophical thoughts. He agreed that the things emphasized by the Dutch educational system could only produce graduates who are against the Islamic cultural system. Natsir did not bother with the so-called Western education. According to him, the goodness of education can't be judged through its geographical location. It lies in the use of knowledge to promote justice and the betterment of life. We found such view when he resolved the problem of the rivalry between those who were educated in the West and those educated in the East. Those who were educated in the Western university felt superior compared to those who were educated in the East Muslim country. Likewise, the graduate of Middle East University regarded who those were educated in the Western universities as ignorant of unbelievers, considering that in my case they promote of modernism which could negatively affect the basic principle of Muslim faith. Natsir took at the moderate stand in the try to bridge to gap between two groups, arguing that knowledge should be evaluated based on the divine value system with the undetermined it to source. That that both the East and the West belong to God, the knowledge and science which come from West source contain both negative and positive aspects. Nasir regarded these two blocks, East and West, as competing in producing human civilization, but they were also complementing each other. As such, there was no point in antagonizing Western education as long it could be used to serve justice and goodness. Those who refused Western education, he said, did not have bored intellectualism. The religions of Islam is only concerned with the contradiction between the truth al-haq and the false al-batil. This perspective demonstration Nasser boarding understanding of the universal value that Islam promotes. He held that truth and justice should be supported they come from non-Muslims, while falsehood al-batil and injustice should be discarded despite them coming from the Muslim world. Nasif parasite in the effectiveness of Western education in training youths to master technological knowledge and explore the development of all things in the universe from which human can benefit. According to him, Muslims cannot reject the Western system simply because of the Western fault, such as materialism and primarily reliance upon faculties of reason. The Muslim world should adopt the system of promotion of individual abilities and intellectual freedoms, while at the same time maintaining its focus on spiritual and moral values of Islam, while not neglecting the importance of secular knowledge. Thus, the concept of knowledge which comes from the Western source should not necessarily be rejected as Islam encourages. It follows the cross-check the concept of truth regardless of cultural and religious boundaries they are in. For this argument on the support of our Western knowledge, Nasser referred to the previous experience from Muslim scholars and scientists who thoroughly studied the philosophies and their theories, science development by scholars such as Plato, Socrates. Later, they made commentaries and analytical studies in eventually producing the original work which beneficial at the global level. During the golden period, Muslim scholars expert and their engaged and thoughts of come to up with new inventions in various fields. Natsir realized that there existed the rivalry between Eastern Islamic and Western model of education. One of the hand, Islam was linked to Eastern education, while the West was viewed as going against to the Islamic value system. It was believed that the Western education bring within certain consequences which contradict Islamic thinking. Now, what is the position of Islam regarding this apparent contradiction? It is true that Islam is opposed to Western education. These are some of the questions Nasir dealt with. This man reasoning was that Islam strongly encourages its adherent to think critically and prohibits think talking other people's ideas blindly. Such guidance he held concluded to be uh, he held conclude to be sum up from the following textual evidence. So now I conclude my paper. Natsir view on an integrated education is to combine both of religious and secular knowledge. He regarded education as reconstruction of Muslim Ummah from its backwardness. The objective of Islamic education is to produce graduates who have to balance between intellectual and religious commentary regarding the equality and benefit to education. Natsir did not make any discussion related to the goodness goodness of education, whether it comes from Islam or from the West. From him, the Muslim world and the West to give the complementary contribution to humanity, and just those who those who totally undermined the Western system of education were narrow-minded. The so-called integrated Islamic education should not heavily emphasize on the spiritual aspect while ignoring the significance of worldly knowledge. The concept of education in the hand of Natsir is quite general. He did not offer the details of the curriculum. Islamic religious subjects such as the Quran and Hadith of the Prophet Muhammad essentially require in-depth analysis as they can attract the students' interest and uh, help them to relate the religious practices. Nevertheless, this theory of integrated education aimed to provide students with an enhanced educational experience, empowering them the knowledge to effect positive change to themselves and the society. This theory encapsulates the idea of the right balance integrated knowledge which seek to produce to harmonious or tolerant society for nation building and progress. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we are grateful to you for keeping time. And now I am going to the chairperson of the session, Dr. Suhaireen Mohammad Salihin. Respected chairperson, please give your presidential remarks for the session. Dr. Suhaireen.
Yes, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I do apologize for being late. This is that, are you hearing me now? Is
Yeah.
my voice? All right, okay, thank you.
Give your concluding remarks about the session.
Yeah, of course, this one, I really appreciate all the presenters, especially the first one. It was, I think that one, the brother Fikri, and then he presented the thought of Mohammad Natsir in the aspect in which he touched upon the traditions and also
Chairperson, would you like to give some space to questions? If there are some questions and
in Q&A box, can you put?
In question answer box.
No, I don't have any question. I don't have any question.
How do it from here?
Okay.
Okay, there is a question from Hamid, is it?
Yeah.
Mohammad Natsir was conscious of un-Islamic practice of his societies, but after him, no such initiative to continue his work has been taken. Can any of the presenters answer this? Would any of the presenters answer this? Dr. Fikri, would you like to answer this question?
I will answer in the chat box.
Okay, okay.
Because, yeah, I think better to allow more time for Dr. Suhaireen to present.
Yeah, he has written the above question is for Ilman Fikri. Okay. Another question is from Nabiha Nafila. How do you think we can incorporate Islamic education with today's education, keeping in mind that most of our education patterns today are West derived? This question is also addressed to Hilman Fikri. Would you answer?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, please.
Wait. Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I think there are many organizations out there like IOS and IIIT itself strive for Islamization of knowledge because we understand that the westernization in our Islamic curricula is a big hindrance for Muslims to associate what they believe as their faith in Islam with the current context of the world. For example, when we look into science, physical science, if we understand it from the education of purely secular and Western science, we would not be a faithful scientist who understand that this world is actually an amanah or a trust given by Allah for human beings, for them to develop imarah and also for them to perform their worship, ibadah, imarah and ibadah. They move abreast with each other. So that's why when we have a purely Western secular science, we have problems in how we develop this world. We neglect the rights of, say, animals and trees. We cut down the trees and mountains. Even in, I'm sorry if this is a bit controversial, even in Mecca, there are a lot massive developments that even, I think, Jabal Omar has been developed to build hotels and shopping malls. So coming back to the questions, there are initiatives to imbue the Islamic teachings and values into our educational system, but it is a process. Even in International Islamic University of Malaysia, which Dr. Sohirin teaching, we have imbued Islamization in our education, but it is still in progress. It is constantly developing. We could not say that there is an exemplary model out there that we can look after, but we can say that there are many universities in the world, in Turkey, in Nigeria, in Bangladesh, even in India, in Indonesia as well, that are striving to have a more Islamic education. And there are many Islamic education conferences, which starts from historical conference in Makkah in 1977. Maybe other presenters would have a better opinion on this issue. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum.
Okay, another question is there. You mentioned about how Mr. Mohammad Natsir talked also about how culture influences us and at some points also shapes what we believe and practice. Suggest ways in which we could explain our practices to people with less knowledge of Islam and its religious texts, considering that people often misconduct between myths and facts in today's world.
Thank you very much. Syed Hussein Alatas, a Malay scholar born in Indonesia, Bogor, has written a monumental work titled Intellectuals in Developing Societies. In it, Syed Hussein Alatas implores the reader to revisit their culture and also their understanding of the world. How we cope with modernity, is it by copying the models from the West or by developing by ourselves. If we copy from the West, like I think Hamka also mentioned substantially in many of his works, when during the Western colonialism, Egypt, for example, is very much amused by French because they are very modern and many developments happening there. So the Pasha, the king at that time, said that let us bring a chunk of Paris to Cairo. So what does he mean by that? That is to bring whatever modernity in France and bring it to Egypt. We are not importing knowledge and also the research spirit as what Mohammad Natsir implores us to do, but rather we import the materials. And this is how, and this is why, despite living in modern era, despite using gadgets, despite using laptops, despite using Zoom, webinar, and so on and so forth, we still stuck deep mired in some myth and khurafat. Because we do not develop our modernity based on knowledge, but rather we import materials from outside. So for example, if we want to build a car, we should learn how to build a car, not import the technicians and out there and the scientist developers from say Japan into our country and develop the car. That does not contribute to the development of knowledge in research and studies to our local context. I believe our scholars would have more to say about this, but as of now, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All the questions are over now. Should we take any other questions? Okay. Mr. Natsir, Dr. Natsir was known as a minister who had no good clothes. His coat was patched up. He is remembered as a minister who was homeless and refused to be rewarded with a luxury car. The question is how government officials are able to emulate this figure so that the number of corruption can be minimized. I think along with Mr. Fikri, here is Syed Jamaluddin, a very senior historian and professor with us. He may also give his reflection on it in 2 minutes. Okay, Dr. Fikri, if you want to respond, please do it. Please respond to the question.
Okay, yeah, very short. I think this comes to the civic education in our schools and universities. We have so many people who wants to be leaders, to be, say, prime minister or presidents or governors, but we are not, our generations were not taught to be a good leader, an example. And that is the flaw in our, perhaps, our educational system. So, and also one thing to note is that we are taught to be leaders, but not taught to be a good followers, a good citizens, a good Muslims. So I think this all boils down to the civic education, the education on values, on how to always constantly remember that we are using the people's money so that we are not living in luxury. I can point out an example for example, in Malaysia, we have a chief minister who used to have, say, a driver drive him in a Mercedes the latest series, and a very luxurious office. But then comes this one chief minister. His name is Nick Abdul Aziz, the deceased almarhum Nick Abdul Aziz. He refused to take even his chief minister's salary because he said, my local region is impoverished, impoverished. So I would channel all my income to develop my own nation, because that is why they vote for me. That is why they chose me. So this, why did he be? How can he have this kind of character? Well, first of all, because he has a very good education. He studies in India, and even in Pakistan, and he's a religious scholar. So I believe he must have think of the Prophet every time he walks into his office. How does the Prophet live his way as a leader, as a president, you can call it, in Medina at that time. So yeah, it all boils down to education, to the younger generations, and the importance of values over material. That is what also Natsir emphasizes when he discusses about the essence of civilization. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. And I think now the main questions are over. And I request the Honorable Chairperson, Dr. Soireen Mohammad Salehin, to please give your remarks.
Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity to give given to me that one. I gave remark. This is especially the personality of Mohammad Natsir, in which that we are studying today. If you look at into the current situation between the idealistic, the goodness of this divine teaching, and the reality of life and the Muslim Ummah in general, is completely different than the current situation. So I think by remembering the contributions of Mohammad Natsir, the way of his thinking, and the way he community during his lifetime, that's to be taken as a model, especially in the current situation, especially among the youth. The only one thing here that I don't want that legacy of Natsir left out in the literature only, but I humbly request, especially those the followers or disciples of Natsir, to come out with this idea, because the Mohammad Natsir himself involved, as it was discussed earlier by the panelists, that Mohammad Natsir involved in establishing numbers of Islamic university all over the country in Indonesia. The first Islamic university in Indonesia, it is located in Yogyakarta. It cannot be separated from the contribution of Muhammad Natsir. And likewise, the university at the outside of Java, in Sumatra, and also in Bandung, and such kind of the thing. Those university in which that it has the connections of the Muhammad Natsir in the history of the establishment, at least they must come out with the idea how that the thought of Muhammad Natsir to be taken, to be put into the structure of the curriculum, in which all the young generation can study from him, from his ideas. So here, I think the legacy of Muhammad Natsir has still remain in the literature. Is it need that to be classified in such a way, or maybe in future plan with collaboration with the other institution like the IOS itself, that maybe to classify the different thought of Muhammad Natsir in different aspects. But in the politics, for instance, it is really hope that the thought of Muhammad Natsir in politics or political system of Islam can be used to be studied by younger generation what is the political Islam is about. Likewise, the ideas of Muhammad Natsir in terms of this plurality, or the pluralism of today, because the community is being challenged by the issue of pluralism, in which these ideas tend to believe that all religions are equal. So this is the thing that Mohammad Natsir also, he discussed about pluralism, but the views of Mohammad Natsir entirely different, that pluralism of today, in which they promoted the equality of all kinds of the religion. This kind of the thing, I believe that one, if Mohammad Natsir thought can be classified, can be put in a certain discipline, in which that younger generation, and at the end will studied on such a thing. In the, exclusively, I think that one, especially now, the conference of today is jointly conducted by the Ibn Khaldun University, in which that Ibn Khaldun University to take the first step in that Department of Political Science, for instance, or in the discipline of the sociology, how come that the views of Muhammad Natsir can be taken as syllabus, and toward the end also the Muslim youth can benefit on such kind of the thing. I'm very much worried that the ideas of Muhammad Natsir remain as the intellectual discourse only. And because of this year, I fully believe that the ideas of Muhammad Natsir need to be structured in terms of the curriculum in which the younger generation can take benefit from his thought. So in the other aspect, to my understanding, as I think it was discussed, that by the participants, especially from Indian context, yes, it is true that the ideas of Muhammad Natsir is not widely known among the public. It is only known, especially among the specialized in the study of Islamic movement. But the public, they still or they remain do not comprehend what is the idea Muhammad Natsir is about. The issue is because the writing of Muhammad Natsir remain in Indonesian language, and those the aspect of the ideas of Muhammad Natsir, especially this book, the 3 volumes of the Capital Selecta, is needed to be translated into the foreign languages. This is, I think, the task lies in the Nasiris, as I can say, to come out with this idea until toward the end the world can really benefit from the thought of Muhammad Natsir in that aspect on that one. This is, I think, this really needed on that part. The other aspect, I think Muhammad Natsir, that he focused on the importance of the brotherhood, but that brotherhood which is focused by the ideas of Muhammad Natsir, it was not limited in the individual level. Muhammad Natsir focused on the brotherhood in the organizational level. So here I think now, as you see that in the Muslim world, there are varieties, different types of the Muslim organization, such kind of the certain organization, especially the organization which is can be grouped, whether you agree or disagree, this term is the Muslim or Islamic movement oriented. They still also, they do not come with the unity of the stand, and even some of them, they look down upon each other. So here I'm saying, especially as I mentioned earlier, these 2 types of the universal, quote unquote, as the Muslim organization, especially I don't know whether in India they have or not, but at the country they're still what do you call it, revolving these ideas, especially by the group which claim themselves as to the importance of the revival of the Caliphate movement. It is which is promoted by the Hizb ut-Tahrir. That the Hizb ut-Tahrir leadership, when look at it with the view like Muhammad Natsir, they consider it regional. It does not really have the intention for reviving at the universal level and does not believe in the Caliphate. These kinds of each organization, they have their own characters, and very unfortunate that some of them also still look down upon each other. In the subcontinent context, I think this is very important to make sort of the collaboration if there is a room for that. I don't know in India and Pakistan, is there any difference between the Jamaat Islami movement which was initiated by Maulana Maududi on that one. So I think we need also the Dewan Dakwah in Indonesia also to collaborate and to learn from each other. And this is what is needed until toward the end come into the unification or the unity among the Muslim organization instead of looking down on each other. This is, I think, the duty that we have to promote the ideas of Muhammad Natsir, which is most of the ideas are still remain within the Bahasa Indonesian language and needed to be translated more into another languages. Okay, in my humble capacity, I think that I heard that some panelists refer to my article, some of them, but most of the article that I wrote mostly available in Arabic, but I think there are 3 of them which was in English. And also the book on the intellectual discourse, and also the history of intellectual Muhammad Natsir is available in the Arabic language. So it is need more, in fact, this one for the Indonesian scholars, this one, to take up the initiative to translate the ideas of Muhammad Natsir into another foreign languages. So this is the thing that I can express my remark in this concluding part of this today's conference. I congratulate to the organizer for this taking initiative for conducting this international webinar jointly conducted by 3 organizations: IOS, Islamic University of Khaldun, and also Triple IT. So hopefully in the future there would be sort of the international webinar, especially in the Arab world. I just wrote my note that one through my WhatsApp, especially to my elder brothers, this is Dr. Muhammad Siddiq, since himself involved in Triple IT, that can propose that Triple IT, the branches of the Arab world, can conduct such kind of the seminar on Muhammad Natsir until the idea is widely known among the Arab people. This is the thing on that one, because through my humble observation, especially among the new generation of Ikhwanis, I can say, Ikhwanis and Salafis, yeah, Ikhwanis and Salafis. I don't know in Indian context in terms of the Tawheed, in the Tawheedic, because when you talk into Tawheedic worldview of Muhammad Natsir, he never discussed Tawheedic worldview based on the which known as this al-firaq, al-madaris, al-aqaidiyah, never touched in such kind of thing. Natsir does not discuss Tawheedic worldview, either you are Salafi or Ash'ariyah, and everything is never discussed by the Sun at all. So Natsir concept of Tawheedic worldview is related with the establishment of justice, sincerity, by what do you call it, in giving the service to Islam to promote the justice and the truth, and until toward the end, this concept of Tawheed is beneficial to all humanity. This is the ideas of Tawheed Muhammad Natsir. Because of this, I'm saying that I can say that the Arab leaders or the Arab Muslim movement leaders, I found some of them that tend to look down on Natsir because Natsir is not considered as universalist, because Natsir fully supported on the nationalism, these are the ideas. But when you get into the argument of Natsir on nationalism, also there's the ground on that one. I think for me, myself, it's something really nightmare to revive the ideas of the Caliphate system. It was happened in the last centuries like today. I think even without formal Caliphate system in such way, if you look at into the West, having the concept of EEC, European Economic Community. But I think if all the Muslim Ummah, they have the capacity for...
now, huh? Thank you so much. And now we are in the valedictory session.
All right, okay. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you so much. Very good session. You had a good time and gave good remarks. Thank you. And so, honorable participants, resource persons, delegates, we are now getting to the valedictory session of the conference. And the valedictory session will be chaired by Dr. Muhammad Manzoor Alam, Chairman, Institute of Objective Studies. And there will be a special address by Dr. Henry Tanjung, Vice Director, Postgraduate School, Ibn Khaldun, University, Indonesia. And there will be then presentation of resolutions and vote of thanks and the valedictory address. I start it straight away by requesting Dr. Henry Tanjung. He is present in the conference and he has been from the very beginning. We appreciate, very enthusiastic. He was the organizer also, and he is giving the special address on the occasion. That's how I am requesting Dr. Henry Tanjung, please. Over to you.
Thank you, Professor Azalwani. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, all speakers and participants. And indeed, it is worth looking back I was still at the Ulal Islamic boarding school when I heard that Pak Natsir passed away in 1993. Ulal Islamic boarding school was one of the Islamic boarding school founded by him and other prominent figures. On July 15, 1987, a student and undergraduate boarding school named Ulul Albab was inaugurated by Dr. Mohammad Natsir together with K. Haji Soleh Iskandar, K. Haji Hasan Basri, Professor Aim Saifuddin, and Professor Didin Hafiduddin. Ulul Albab Islamic Boarding School is intended to produce intellectuals who are scholars. For this purpose, an integration strategy of three institutions is used, namely campus, mosque, and Islamic boarding school. Ladies and gentlemen, at the back cover of the book titled Muhammad Natsir Sebuah Biografi, Professor Aim Saifuddin, former chairman of the advisory board of Dewan Dakwah Indonesia, and also former rector of Ibn Khaldun University, wrote, "No matter how many people write about the name Muhammad Natsir, 70 years, 80 years, or 100 years, he is alive. So, the Muslim community in particular, and Indonesian society in general, should learn a lot from him. In education, politics, Islamic issues, he is multi-talented. Again, he will not die. I admire him, and to this day, I'm still learning from him." That is said by Professor Aim Saifuddin. And this conference, all of us are once again asking the personality and his contribution to nation, education, health, culture, Islamic thought, and others field. And it is proven, the more we discuss and the more we talk about him, the more he can be seen how great he is as a national figure, educational figure, cultural figure, Islamic figure, and other figures. We have spoken a lot about the personality and contribution of Dr. Muhammad Natsir since yesterday. Now, we must move to action. At least, the lesson for all of us, according to Mr. Hariko Wibawa Satria, is Dr. Muhammad Natsir personality is something to audit and evaluate our one-time life, suitable for young people, so that life is not just work, earn money, and that's all, and then die. No, in life, there are great improvements that we strive for. And to those Indonesians who love Indonesia, here is the fact about Indonesia. Muhammad Natsir's phenomenal contribution was his success in parliament through the Masyumi faction. He led to dissolve the United Republic of Indonesia and its replacement with the unitary state of the Republic of Indonesia in the 50s. In the perspective of uniting of Indonesian nation, Muhammad Natsir's name will always remain in Indonesian history. Dear friends, in my view, this today conference is very useful, not only for the Indonesian people, but also for Muslims around the world. The conference program yesterday was watched by 571 people via YouTube. More than 200 people follow it directly via Zoom, making this conference the participation of at least 800 people worldwide. This is a truly international conference. I thank all the participants who participated in this event until the end. I would also like to thank the speakers who took the time to provide insights about Muhammad Natsir to the entire audience. My highest appreciation goes to Honorable Excellency Dato Sri Anwar Ibrahim, Honorable Excellency Dr. Yusuf Kalla, Dr. Hidayat Nur Wahid, Dr. Fadlizon, Mr. Ahmad Fawzil Nasir, Dr. Muhammad Siddiq, Professor M. Kamal Hassan, Dr. M. Manzur Alam, Dr. Ahmad Tontonji, Professor Z. M. Khan, Professor M. Azalwani, Dr. Nirwan Safrin, Dr. Saidur Rahman Azmi, Dr. Sahirin Muhammad Solihin, Professor Azwalwani, Professor Istiak Danish, Professor Hasina Hasya, and other speakers that cannot be mentioned one by one. Ladies and gentlemen, I conclude my special address by saying, thank Institute of Objective Studies, New Delhi, India, International Institute of Islamic Thought, USA, America, and the Indonesian Da'wah Council for involving and inviting Ibn Khaldun University as the co-organizer of this conference. Hopefully, this collaboration will continue in the future. And I thank you very much for your attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi.
And I think you summed up the things in the best possible way. And you also reported to various distinguished scholars who made presentations. And at the same time, I believe that there remains something which is to be added, not because that you have not referred to it, but by way of another perception of the things. That's I shall not repeat what has been said, but I have certain things I think they have to be noted. First and foremost is that the scholars have to not necessarily follow the methodologies which have been devised by somebody for some purpose, and they must keep in mind what are the objectives and what are the demands of the times, demands of future, and demands of the humanity, and therefore devise their own methodologies, devise their own terminologies, and not to miss the focus on certain important things. So from that point of view, when I say anything about, I'm Professor M. Afzalwani, I would say that here at the moment, to look to the geopolitical importance of Indonesia or any other country in the area is very important, and to see it in the times of Dr. Natsir and to see it in times today, and also to reflect on future. The question is that in a state where there was the colonial onslaught, not only from the West, but also from the East. There was the Dutch influence, there was the Japanese influence, and then the result was the denial of identity, denial of human dignity, and denial of self-determination to the people of the place which we today call as United Indonesia. Now, in such a situation, actually, if someone is born with a sensitive heart and mind, he cannot be understood by reference to being democratic, non-democratic, that thing, that thing, that thing. I think he has to be seen with reference to the pain, with reference to the sufferings which were happening in the land, in the society, and the kind of subjugation which was existing there, and where the owners, where the inhabitants were suffering, and intruders were prolonging and perpetuating that suffering. What should be the state of mind of the person? What is the level of poverty? Poverty of thought, poverty of literacy, poverty of culture, poverty of these ideas for development, ideas for protection of one's own society and even human beings. then in such a situation, I think the right way to describe Dr. Mohammad Natsir is to look to that sensitive mind, whom we could find just at the age of 22. He's emerging as a very great author. He is writing about the Quran, and he is writing about the people who belong to other religion and are trying to influence the people of his faith. And then in the same situation, he is rightly writing about Sirat, Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. I think he is the best guide for these situations to be faced. Our scholarship has not to be pledged to the methodologies and terminologies which somebody has developed. And when you are lost in that, the pain which made him a scholar and a man, a sensitive person, who made him a leader in his own right, that is lost. So we have to be on the ground. We have to be in the circumstances. We have to see how that boy of 22 is responding to the situations. What he speaks out is pain. What he speaks out is concern. What he does is not he is doing with reference to your terminologies of modernism, postmodernism, westernism, easternism. No. He's responding to human misery. He's responding to the concerns which the humanity should ever have. Why should the academics be lost in all that? Why shouldn't you have the courage and potential to reject all the methodologies which are of no concern now, today, which cannot lead us to the purpose, which begin as academics and end as academics and no good? You are lost in the thought, and the thought is ending somewhere where we are never there. It should not be a satellite to be sent to an unknown planet. Our academics should be an endeavor to address human suffering, human pain, human indignity, discrimination, and right of everybody to rise, come up with the dignity and assert himself, herself in this universe which is bestowed by Almighty, which belongs to none, to him, but to all. That's what is the basic thing I believe I am finding. What is prime in the words, in the writings, in the deeds of that institution builder at a young age of 22, 23. What is there in it? Was he thinking in 1929 to become the Prime Minister of Indonesia? Was he thinking that what there somewhere Maulana Madudi was writing, somebody else was writing? No. The real thing is that he was looking to the people around. He was looking to the situations around. He had something his own. He was not a borrower, he was an original thinker. And please note that original thinkers can also give different versions of thought to different things, because the situations are different, cases are different, questions are different, matters are different, personal situations are different. And he has to respond to all the situations in their varied versions. That is what Dr. Natsir is doing, and that's what is required. We cannot say that he was not this, he was that, he was not this thing. He was a great sensitive human being, born with concern for humanity, born with concern for others. And that was the courage that even when holding very important positions, he would not mind that his coat is patched, his shirt is torn up. He does not sit in a car. The courage comes from that concern itself. It's not a mere paperwork academics. Whatever he wrote, has to be read in the context that what the man he was right from the beginning. And he actually lived with his people. His heart was with the people. He lived with the nation. He worked for the consolidation of Indonesia. He worked for the integration of Indonesia. He had the intellect to draw the agreements between the different units. He could bring them together. Even when there were challenges from the white and red hegemonists, when there were the stormy winds from the west and east, he wanted his nation to stand in its own identity, stand in its own character, stand in its own contributor to its welfare of its people and to the people world over. And that's why when he got later on the opportunity, he did later on converse with the thinkers elsewhere in the world. It is not that he was influenced, then at the age of 22 he would not have done it. He did share his views with others. There were comparisons and contrasts. There were uniformities and harmonies and contradictions with thoughts of others. But he was a man in himself. He was a scholar in himself. He was a thinker in himself. He had an integrity in his own self. That's why he gave up the comforts. He gave up the positions. He came up open, barefooted, and then he stood somewhere with the strength which he possessed. And that's how he is living a very good model for the people who somewhere see there is pain, somewhere they see there is suffering. Here is deprivation, here is subjugation, here is imposition. That is Dr. Mohammad Natsir is presenting a very good hero of the humanity, hero of the human history, and pride and honor must be for the nation of Indonesia, the country of Indonesia in particular, and all the human beings who can face the things in poverty. And that's, if I say that Dr. Iqbal said to Javed, Mera tariq amiri nahi faqiri hai, khudi na bej, garibi mein naam paida kar. I would not say Dr. Iqbal's word influenced Dr. Mohammad Natsir. No, in the heart and mind of Dr. Mohammad Natsir, it was already there naturally that he has to not to give his pledge, his things to anything, but to his own sensitivities, understanding, and even in a state of poverty, he has to come forward, he has to speak, he has to express himself, he has to become a journalist, and he has to become a conveyor, he has to become an awakener, and that's how he performed it, and he did it. And that's why I would say that the prime thing for any of the presenters in any of the, adopting any of the methodologies for analyzing the personality, the first and the foremost thing should be seen that what was natural there, and natural in case of Dr. Mohammad Natsir was that he was coming up in particular circumstances and he was possessing his own thought and he gave his own responses to things. And whatever number of books he wrote, while writing as the globe is not flat, the globe is oval. Geography varies, environment varies, intensity and concentration of chemicals varies, thoughts also vary, cultures also vary, behaviors also vary, likings and dislikings also vary, and that's how season is also vary. And Dr. Mohammad Natsir is giving appropriate response at different times, and he is never pledged to anybody. He is only pledged that appropriate response to be given to the appropriate situation. He could respond to all seasons, he could respond to all the problems, he could respond to any of the requirements, and the academician will put his own thought into his mind. No. The best of the academics is that you understand the things as they are. That's why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would always pray to God, show me the things, O God, as they are. Allahumma arina haqaiq al-ashai kama hiya. I think Dr. Mohammad Natsir has to be seen as he was. A very sensitive mind, a very thoughtful mind, a very responsive mind. And then when somebody was asking a question that how we can have the people today who would not opt for luxury cars, even when they are in influential positions, I think they cannot do it without developing the sensitivity, the confidence, the belief of Dr. Mohammad Natsir. Belief has to come first. Action comes automatically. If you don't feel that way, if you don't think that way, if you don't understand that way, action cannot be that way. We feel different, we think different, we act differently. And that's why I wrote in the concept paper, he was a politician, but he was not a politician by option for a profession. He was a politician using politics as a means to attain the goals of giving pleasure to the most suffered nation of the world at that time. He wanted to bring pleasure to it. And that's how he left the power for that thing, and they did not compromise. My dear friends, there are lessons for all of us, and then we probably have to get the best of the lessons from him, that we should not surrender to any of the methodologies. There should be one methodology, that we want to know the things as they are. Allahumma arina haqaiq al-ashya'i kama hiya. And then try to attain the objectives. And that's how I would say that we should, if we did not do now, we should do. Understand Dr. Mohammad Natsir in a context that what he meant by suffering, what he meant by poverty, what he meant by progress, what he meant by pride of the nation, what he meant by the consolidation of the nation, and then I can myself understand. And Indonesia has a potential. It can develop into a great world leader. It can contribute to future human rights regime of the world. It can contribute to the better political system in the world. It can contribute to development of better economic system in the world. It has all the resources, ocean, mountainous, and seasonal, and cultural, and thought as well. I think Dr. Mohammad Natsir should be understood in that context as a thought leader, not only for 20th century, but in the background of 20th century, for 21st century, and after. And that's how, if you will read his books with a different perspective as you are writing them, at that time you will not find that Mohammad Natsir who is generally being described and then compared with someone, he had this thought, he said this thing. No, you have to understand him in the context which I said, and I tried to bring home this thing, that justice is done to Dr. Mohammad Natsir. Justice is to be done.